when it comes to doing the research of why some of the most profound incidents take place in the world, these profanities, these cases which are so significant within the law of ufology, surely at some point someone's got to ask why. What is it that brings on these profound experiences? I don't think they're just a shot in the dark. Oh, one day UFOs decided to come down and land and invade a small village in Brazil, for an example, like Virginia. You know as well as I do that there's usually a lot more to the story or to the tale in regarding such matters. However, the Western world will just focus on that incident. It will not go post. Very unlikely. It tends to stay within it, and it does not go pre. But I always think, and you've mentioned this as well, that sometimes there is critical information in the pre in regarding why an incident might take place. And in this case, Virginia, Brazil incident of 1996 is probably one of the most well-known cases in the world. And of course, James Fox, who did a Moment of Contact, a documentary about it, is trying to reveal information pertaining to video footage which was taken by doctors of this so-called alien creature, as they want to call it, in the hospital, and he's on the hunt for that. And I do know that he believes it exists, and that more information will be coming out. Now, I'm thinking that he's probably, I don't know if he's going to do a part two, or he's going to re-release the documentary with like a limited edition or something like that, or extended edition with extra footage or extra information in it. I don't know. But the hunt continues. But it is a very interesting case. And I'm not happy to go through it. Anybody that's into ufology will know the Virginia case. It's pretty well known worldwide. It's up there at the top with the Claris UFO incident, for an example.
Mhm.
These ones just really do, at the pinnacle, stand out in ufology as some of the most significant cases ever on record. But I mean, remember you recalling, told me about you'd looked into possible previous things that might have been going on in that location. Taking into also into condition that there are certain things taking place in Brazil. We've already come to an acknowledgement that Brazil, Puerto Rico, Colombia, there's a number of places like this, which if you were to look on the map and put a pin in there to say, where do the most ritualistic practices,
Mhm.
occultist, ritualistic magic, invocation, those sort of things are taking place in the 21st century? You
Mhm.
would end up putting a pin right in Brazil. You would put a pin probably in Colombia and maybe Puerto Rico as well, and a few other little places. And we have to ask those questions. Why do so many really bad things happen in regarding the phenomenon? It seemingly acts a little bit more. It's a little rough around the edges. This phenomenon when it comes to those locations. Now you could say, "Oh, right, well, taking into consideration that a lot of these places aren't policed as much, or don't have as much air force, do not have too many people around. There's a lot of areas which are just rural and not many people living, which it's
Mhm.
easy to get in there if you have an agenda to go in there and do something and get out without stirring too much interest up in the locality." You could say down to that. But when you rule all that in, because there are other rural
Mhm.
places all over the world, what is so significant that stands out is its connection between the people and the phenomenon. And that connection is through the occultism. It's through
Mhm.
ritualistic practice. Now, you mentioned to me something about some of this stuff that you heard about what was going on over
Yeah.
in Brazil. You just want to touch on that because then we can go into a little bit more about what we
Yeah.
recently discovered here. Well,
Oh my, this is a heavy episode, Steve. I'm so glad
it
that we're
needs to be
finally
done.
covering it.
It needs to be done,
It
though.
needs to be done. So I am in contact with a couple, or specifically one researcher in Brazil. His name is Caio, and fascinating individual. And he and I have been discussing not just that case study, but other case studies in the larger phenomenon. And that topic came up, and I'm just all ears. What's going on here? Right? In knowing the pathology of the phenomenon, that it likes to be conjured, it will actually conjure people so that they'll conjure it. And so you get into this who's conjuring who dynamic. But yeah, we have been discussing that for a while, and that little tidbit of information that ignited this passion to understand what happened came from a researcher friend of mine named Kyle, and we talked about that in depth. What happened? Well, here's the elephant in the room. If we want to go there immediately,
Yeah.
the narrative within American ufology is a carefully curated construct designed designed to sterilize the phenomenon. And here's the frustrating part about it. Not only are we getting like omitted like information to where we're not even being told the pre-archetypes that the government is aware of. So we don't even know what happens before the initial manifestation, the phenomena that accompanies the conjuring. And we're not even being made aware of the conjuring itself. And so when people hear me on podcasts, and especially even Steve, and we are saying, listen, guys, there's something out there in the darkness that we're not being told about in this quote unquote, and I don't want to get in trouble, Steve, you know where I'm going, age of disclosure.
Yeah.
It is an age of institutional non-disclosure because
Okay.
at the end of the day, Steve, I just watched a clip from
I know
a
I've
member of
watched the whole thing,
Skywatcher,
buddy. I've watched the whole
from
thing.
Skywatcher, who even stressed, mm, as much as they want to say it's disclosure, they're omitting darkness. They're omitting negative encounters with the phenomenon. And we're going to be talking about what happened in this particular case study. But make no mistake,
Yeah.
if they can control the question, they've already controlled the answer. And that's the preface to where we're at today.
That's it. It's exactly, that's this. I mean, look, everyone's harping on about the Age of Disclosure documentary. I've watched it and absorbed the information, which didn't really take long because it was what is exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
More whistleblowers, more suspicious allegations, more I've seen this and I heard that. It's just not good enough. You cannot even, the word disclosure shouldn't even be on that documentary, I'll be honest with you. And I'm not being harsh. I mean, compared to, when I can look at a documentary from the 1970s and think,
Mhm.
now that's interesting.
Yeah,
Compared to the 21st century, mate, and it's just like, what the hell?
that's
It's
fine.
more of the same for anybody. And I'm sorry if anybody really, wants to watch it out there. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but it is more of the same. Prepare yourself for this, and at the end of the day, do we ever get any closer? It's because we know, and you'll know as I know, and a number of others, that it's highly compartmentalized, it's highly
Yeah.
filtered. The information has an agenda, a narrative, which they want to push forward. But this is with the blinkers on, and what we're doing is we're looking at the whole thing. We're not looking at an incident. We're looking like, well, what led up to the incident? What causes an incident to take place afterwards? What happens then? Uh,
Right.
why people aren't doing that is because, and I don't think, look, there are some clever people in the world, but to me, it's like ignorance. It's like, let's not go there. Let's just stick to this. And you cannot, because these things just don't derive from nowhere. There's
Right.
usually a predecessor. There's usually something, and in something that's indicative of the phenomena, why it's taking place. It's no different than the paranormal, supernatural, demological. When you look into these people that are having these experiences, there's always a reason why. You never go, well, it's just come out of the blue and I've no idea what. There's always something. There's always a trigger. There's always a mechanism. So when it comes to the Virginia case, I'm going to try and go through some of the details that you're not likely aware of. Okay. Myself and Nathaniel have been, we suspected that something wasn't quite right on the backbone of knowing ritualistic practice does take place in Brazil. We also have references, well, to the phenomena not descending from the sky, but seemingly ascending from the ground, which you can mention something about that, Nathaniel, if you want to.
Yes, this is a Brazilian researcher by the name of Rony Vernay, who is boots on the ground, have been to that town, investigated, discussed the phenomenon with locals, and then went back and found sigils in his room, on his bed.
Yes.
Yeah, if that model is wrong, if Nathaniel is just projecting his worldview upon the phenomenon, then that should not be happening across the world. But it is.
Yeah.
And so he, in interviewing these witnesses in the local area, the locals there in the town, they said that, well, it wasn't really a craft coming down of the sky. It was a cloud, like a cloud coming out of the earth. And then from that pre-archetype, mind you, that's a key data point. That's the pre-manifestation, the pre-interface event took place. From out of that cloud emerge entities rather. And that is fascinating. But again, if you go look at t-shirts in the States, won't say anything about that. It'll just be strictly, well, it's got to be a materialist, secularist, this kind of nuts and bolts thing. It's not. It's very much local, very much here, and it came out of the earth, Steve.
Yeah, that's where it starts getting very interesting. So, there's a gentleman called Jose Gomes de Oliveira, better known as Z Gomes.
Mhm.
Now, he was born on November the 20th, 1903. He lived uh, on Dr. Jose Biscaro Street. And this is where the old Virginia slaughterhouse was, interestingly enough. Slaughterhouse. Maybe
Mhm.
something in that, actually.
Yeah.
Which is where it was located. He passed away in 1998 and was a legendary breeder of certain types of dogs known as the feeler dog. The stories that are told say that he performed rituals involving animals. He was a dog breeder.
Mhm.
So his rituals involving animals. Now, when we hear about things about rituals with animals, it's usually that the animals have been sacrificed, bloodletting, blood sacrifice.
Mhm.
And stories that are told that he performed these rituals involving these animals and people in the forest as well, in the forests, and that he owned a goat with eyes of fire,
Mm.
red-eyed goat, rumors or something else, as well as a little devil in a bottle, apparently. So we don't know.
Interesting.
However, it is said that he donated a lot of land, 10,000 square meters, for a church to be built there.
Mhm.
And it was thought this was done at the latter stage of his life because of forgiveness for his sins. So it was like, I might be let off the hook.
Right.
Others say that he was involved with the appearance of ETs, as they say, in Varginha. Now, how did it come to that? Well, it was just actually little devils, which is what it was referred to as little devils. Now, of course, you think to yourself, well, where's the red association when it comes to devils? I mean, why is the devil red? Why do so many things of that nature seem to have red eyes? And you have to say, well, okay, it's interesting that these little devils had red eyes.
Mhm.
bit like the original chupacabra, that was originally seen to have red
Mhm.
eyes. Since it all appeared near the forest lands, and it appeared it has different forms. This is your archetype stuff coming in, yeah.
The pre and post.
Pre and post, exactly.
Right.
Pre and post. Some smooth and brown, others hairy. Both with red eyes, and both smelt terribly of sulfur.
Mhm.
Sulfur is a geological smell. So when the Virginia case occurred, it was originally investigated by a group of 7 ufologists who went down in history as known as the Group of Seven. Among them was the main figures was a researcher called Ibaraja Rodriguez. Now Ibaraja is highly respected lawyer in Virginia, but in addition to being a ufologist, he was also involved in parapsychological research. Interesting. In fact, at the time he was researching parapsychology more than ufology, and he
Mhm.
was part of a paranormal research group in Virginia. Now, today he has broken ties with all ufologists involved in the Virginia case, and even with ufology itself. He still
Mhm.
believes that paranormal phenomena exist, but he rejects the extraterrestrial hypothesis. This position isolated him within ufology, and many people do not understand that he is not denying the phenomenon itself, but rather stating that according to him, there is absolutely no evidence that Virginia case has anything to do with extraterrestrials.
Oops.
He told in private conversations, not with one person, but a number, who came in front of the Garden Virginia case at the time. They obviously already knew about the legend of Gomes, about these ritualistic practices, but that his hypothesis was quickly discarded by a group of ufologists who focused on the ET hypothesis only, and they ended up going their own direction.
Mhm.
So basically, they didn't. People wanted to go with their own hypothesis that this is extraterrestrial in origin, and of course, they went
Mhm.
their own direction. Within the legend of Gomes that circulated in Virginia, it is said that the same farm where he carried out the breeding of these dogs was underground. Underneath the farm was ritualistic hall,
Mhm.
which was being used to carry out these particular rituals, which may have led with the blood sacrificing of
Yeah.
animals, the manifestation of archetypes in the vicinity. So, whereabouts is his farm? It's right across the road from where the incident happened, just right across the road, literally spitting distance. Now, of course, you mentioned Ronnie Vert,
Mhm.
and he was apparently there, as you said.
Yeah.
He visited the farm, and he connected the story together. He realised, yeah, definitely something strange going on here. And it's interesting that the whole location of where this took place is in a
Mhm.
horseshoe ring of positive magnetic anomalies,
There we go. There we go.
which you
That's
speak. Yeah.
huge too. It's huge.
So you've got all the telltale signs
Mhm.
of a pre-incidence here of taking place of ritualistic practices, the use of animals. Now he's breeding dogs there, so likely he was using the dogs. In the location, it's also underground, and the manifestations that take place, which were referred to as seen as little devils,
Mhm.
manifested phenomena risen from the ground,
Absolutely.
not descended from the sky. It remained locally as little devils. You know, this is why there was so much fear around them.
Mhm.
Until later, ufologists, it's ET, it's extraterrestrial. Now, people out there are going to say, okay, well, we've got this one guy who's saying that he believed he came across some crashed object. Okay, we don't know if that's a crashed object or not. But then we know that the phenomena can manifest objects, you know, and they can do whatever, make them look in any way, shape, or form. Because
Mhm.
one thing this phenomena does is deceive, you know, and
Oh yeah.
people will often see something which isn't actually what it is. But I have to say, when I'm looking at all the indicators here, I've got this little bulb going off. And
Mhm.
here we go again. I'm seeing all the telltale signs. Now, you mentioned that Ronnie goes back home and a sigil appears. There's a sigil on his bed. He's already at that stage, too involved.
There we go. Too
Would you
close.
agree with that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Too close. And it's an incredible researcher he is. I have all the respect in the world for him because people don't realize that when you get too close to that and you start having sigils that something, quote, something is trying to perform on him.
Yeah.
That researcher will go home and depending on the intention that sigil is charged with, he will suffer from something. His environment will change. That's the whole point of it. And that's a key data. It's incredible, Steve. I'm so excited
It
for
really
people to
is.
get
But you
this.
know, when we've got to get. I think what's important here is like if we just paint a scene of what sort of
Yeah.
things go on in Brazil. Okay, August 1966. Puzzling case emerged from Niterói in Brazil when two men discovered on a hillside, dressed in matching formal suits, interestingly enough, and wearing unusual lead masks that covered their eyes.
Hmm.
They were both perished. They were both
Mhm.
later identified as Manuel Pereira dos Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, both electronic technicians from Rio de Janeiro. What the hell are they doing in Niterói in Brazil? Near their bodies, investigators found a notebook containing cryptic instructions, including one that read, "Be at the agreed place. Make sure to take capsules after the effect. Protect the metals. Await a signal and wear mask." What does that mean? Tell
Right.
me.
Right.
Highly suspicious. The circumstances of their deaths have never been fully explained. No signs of struggle or obvious external injuries were reported, and toxicology testing at the time was limited, but didn't really notice anything, leaving questions about whether the men ingested substances that caused the deaths. Some theories suggest that they may have been conducting some type of experiment related to radiation or electronics, given their technical background. Others point to the possible spiritual or paranormal motivations of the 1960s in Brazil, because in the 1960s era, the Brazil was at its heightened point of ritualistic practice throughout the night. And then I mean, did it grow? 70s, 80s, and 90s, but 60s, going back quite a long time. And it also saw coincidentally, the 60s saw the strongest interest in the UFO phenomenon and metaphysical practices throughout all of Brazil.
Mhm.
Tied. Phenomena,
Yeah. Yeah.
ritualistic practice, tied. Now, it's also interesting about just how far these particular occultists, groups,
Mhm.
establishments go. The case of emasculated boys in
Mhm.
Atamira in Brazil refers to a series of crimes occurring in Atamira in the interior of Para, which has victims These boys, aged between 8 and 14 years, these boys met the demise between 1989 and 1993. Now, according to the power justice system, the crimes were committed or blamed on ritualistic practices of satanic and black magic promoted by the Linamento Universal Superior Sect, a mystical
Mhm.
organization that, among other things, contested the Western idea of divinity. I'm not going to go into detail about how the boys were found, but I'm sure many of people watching this, when they've watched the cattle mutilations in Colorado from
Mhm.
the 1970s, you've got an exact sort of thing going on here. Now, the question I have regarding this, and I've actually got the autopsy reports and everything, but at the moment I'm having them transcribed into
Right.
so I can understand them. They were only released as photographs of the documents, so it's not like you can just highlight the words and copy and translate. Take them over to a different language.
Mhm.
It's a bit painstaking, but it's being done. Now, what's interesting is 1989 to 1993. If it was down to this Satanists, these the Liamento Universal Superior Sect
Mhm.
carrying out these atrocities, then we have to say, okay, was it them or was it phenomena?
Mhm.
If we got phenomena or the phenomenon doing this in the vicinity of a satanic sect, now the thing is, phenomena might be produced in the vicinity of a satanic occult order, you know,
Right.
because they don't tend to be too far away from ground zero or when it's invocated,
Mhm.
or are they mimicking it? Are the Satanists doing it and they're
Right.
mimicking the phenomena? Because this is not a natural cause. Look, there are lots of people that have been, you know, come to their demise over the years, um, abducted. What's the difference between abducted and kidnapped?
Nothing.
Exactly nothing, because it's wording. Because when you lean into the words, "Oh, these boys must have been kidnapped," you immediately think a man. If I
Mhm.
turn around and say these boys were like may have been abducted, you start to think with the possibility abducted by what? That question
Right.
mark comes in, doesn't it? Doesn't when you say kidnapped. But it means the same thing. We don't know if they were responsible or not, but they were charged, of course.
Mhm.
And maybe even pressured into saying things, maybe, because there was a huge demand that someone must pay for these crimes. You could have, it won't be the first time, an occult order that is mimicking the phenomenon, because when you go back in time, you don't find, we weren't finding anybody in the same manner, as
Mhm.
cattle. It's just, when it's a crime. But this exact match to this. You
Mhm.
have to ask the question, why does it match the cattle? Why?
Right.
Is it
Right.
absolutely identical? What's the reason for it? Is it phenomena doing it? And if it's not, and it is down to this satanic sect, then why are they mimicking it? Because
Mhm.
in 1989 to 1993, when this occurred, it was already known about the cattle in Colorado and many other places. That was going on in the 70s. Linda Morton Howe did a
Right.
documentary, didn't she, in the 1970s?
Yeah. Chris O'Brien and Linda Moulton Howe. Yeah.
Strange Harvest was the first one I think
Mhm.
she actually did, and it was quite impactful. So this information was already out. So there are those being mimicked, and that's interesting why they would mimic it, because it's a sect and it's a satanic sect. So why are they mimicking phenomena, which is interesting, or it is a phenomena? Either way, we've got something a bit strange going on here.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So it just goes to show about the stuff that's going on in Brazil. And just to finish on that, you've also got current ritualistic practices taking place by just groups of people, which are going off
Yes.
to the forests and stuff, aren't they? Have you heard of things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was basically a town of practitioners who, again, in our discussion with Gustavo, it's a petri dish of tradition, It's not just one esoteric ritual or one esoteric tradition. It's many of them kind of blended in. And then you have the invocation and you have the phenomenon, and that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And I don't want to interrupt you, so keep
No,
going,
no,
brother.
no. I
It's
mean,
all you.
the good thing is that we do have contacts with
Hmm.
some good researchers, Gustavo and Eduardo,
Hmm.
from the old Contacto podcast, and they are themselves investigative researchers, um, had experiences, I believe,
Hmm.
and they are hot on the track of what is currently going on, and even recently, within the last day or two, I'm receiving photographs from Gustavo of they look like they look like flying saucers. What else can you say?
Yeah.
They're taken in the day. This is not, you know, this is not what is it in the sky or at night, where you don't get no very good clarification. It's low. It's not high up in the sky. And it's
Yeah.
just sat there against the lighter sky. So obvious, it stands out like a sore thumb. It's a credible photograph. I've looked at it. And when I asked when it was taken, literally, literally like just days ago, and he
Hmm.
said it's picking up. The activity is picking up again. It's
Yeah.
escalating. And it's not the first person to say that. I've heard this around in other people from different places.
I have too. I am as a side note here, I'm going to be doing a lecture series in Colombia, and the contact I have in Colombia is also a researcher, and he's saying the same thing, where he was doing some kind of
He's in
he
Colombia,
was
did you say?
he's in Colombia, brother. Yeah, and
Right.
so he has a picture that he sent me, which I can send it to you too as well, where he's standing on this ledge, and it's like a cliff, and it just goes off. You just see a bunch of trees, and it's kind of just cool. He's just looking around, and it's kind of a cool like an Instagram post or something. And up above him, there is this weird looking craft out in the sky. And I'm looking at this, and I'm obviously, interested in the craft. It's like, okay, zoom in on the craft, Nathaniel. Oh my gosh, that's wild. He goes, no, 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 no. It gets weirder. He goes, look at the balls of light. You're gonna love this. The balls of light that are present with the craft.
Oh, the
And they
bear
were
with it
they were present. They were strategically placed around it, almost as if simultaneously projecting the construct
is the
that
show.
most people would have seen and said, okay, that's really what we're dealing with. And right, but yeah, and he asked the same thing. He's like, Nathaniel, have you noticed that this is picking up? And what really concerns me, and I'm going to be talking about this more and more in my upcoming interviews, is that if we did not have photography, if you and I, Steve,
Yeah.
were in the first century and saw these constructs, but never captured the pre-archetype on film, we would have written mythology surrounding just the mask it wears.
That's exactly it. That's
Because
exactly right.
we lack the technology to say, hey, there are some lights here that are kind of teaming up to create the physiological construct that we're writing books about that we really think exists. And we got these theories surrounding it, mythologizing the mask it wears. Not it's so, but that you're right, and it is picking up, and it's wild that it's picking up in that part of the world.
Yeah,
Should wild,
going.
but it is.
It generally is rising. It's getting higher and higher. It has been since around about October of last year. We had all the phenomena appearing in the sky in Jersey, didn't we? The true phenomena. I
Yeah,
mean, we're talking the light phenomena. The more I don't know if it's a true face of the phenomenon, but it's certainly the predecessor to manifestation. It seems to be. So the Americans put their own toys out there as well, didn't they? And of course, some mass
yeah.
fusion to basically throw the baby out with the water, the
Mhm.
bath water, and say, "Oh yeah, it's all ours." Well, yeah, very clever move actually to dilute the situation very quickly. But you hear stories of these balls of light going into nunneries, passing down corridors and
Yeah.
turning left into doorways to get into the nuns' bedrooms areas,
Yeah.
and it manifests an archetype which interacts with these religious people. And they didn't have good experiences. They're
Oh,
documented in
oh, they
Vatican
did not.
archives, you know. But it's the same thing that you might see in the sky, but you might
Mhm.
get a form of different manifestation appear, unless it's more near to the ground. In the Min Min light in Australia, it chases people, chases cars.
Yes, I'll give you a case study here, my friend.
Mm,
This is, let's see here. I'm gonna try to find it. All right. It's I'm gonna try to pronounce this.
yeah.
The Emilkin abduction in Poland in 1978.
Mm, okay.
Now this is wild, and I haven't mentioned this in times past. Jan Wolski, a Polish farmer, described being taken aboard a craft by short humanoid beings in black suits. He explicitly said the craft first appeared as a bright rectangular bus-like object in the sky, but when it descended, it was a glowing white sphere. So at first, right, and you and I had discussed this in depth in times past, where okay, it's the pre-archetype, it's the ball of light that turns into the craft. Now it's the craft that goes back to the pre-archetype in order to manifest entities.
That's right.
Now, that's a key data point. So it's kind of shifting until the form serves the function. Now I have to be the ball of light. Why? Because now we're walking through it.
Mm,
Was it really the craft at all? Or was it a portal designed to compress the presence of an entity? The reason I say that is because I have a book I just recently purchased called Deathbed Visions
oh, yes.
by
Yeah.
William Barrett.
Mm,
And one of his case studies is a man who's dying, and in the corner of the room, he sees a ball of light. This is all connected. I don't know how, but it
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
And it gets bigger and bigger. It's pulsating, it's bigger and bigger. And then out of that ball of light steps his deceased father. Quote, his deceased father. So, are we dealing with the craft? Because
Mm.
conventional wisdom says that when you see something that looks like it's one thing, just once there, then that's all that should be there.
Mm,
And it's not true. The phenomenology is saying otherwise. And now what we're realizing is that within the pre-archetype that could create the physiological construct, there may be an entity in there.
mm,
And
yeah.
we as researchers, even especially ufologists, okay, that's a bold's craft. No, it's not. We've had testimony of people saying, okay, well, I've been in it. It's alive. Why? Is it possible that, and I know you hate the word portal, Steve, so I'm not going to use it. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
going to
just think
use
there
it,
should
but
be a better name for it. Yeah.
but it does seem to be compressed consciousness or something. But the pre-archetype, see, again, seems to be the most effective, most present function and mechanism employed. It's not the craft, it's the ball of light. And I think
Exactly.
it's fascinating. But that, again, getting back to the Virginia case, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cloud coming out of the earth, and then
Mm.
from it emerges these beings.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is that the more you go back in time, the more simpler it's written. We didn't have as many people trying to steer a narrative.
Yeah,
They were saying heavenly balls of light, heavenly this, heavenly
yeah,
lights. It's interesting that you do get these things interacting with people, seen in the skies, following aircraft during wars, seen
mhm,
over Mexico City in the dozens, experiencing as ghost lights, which are often referred to as
yeah,
lights in the US. We have the light phenomena associated in ancient times to biblical events. We have the light phenomena reported in Vatican archives for priests, nuns, monks, which have had these encounters with the balls of light. So you have to sort of say, okay, so yes, there was the manifestations of structured objects, but it seems the most in those days was light phenomena. And there are so many. The Min Min light in Australia chases people. There are these lights have different names in different countries, but pretty much what they're saying is, when they're saying they're given chase, is that they are insentient, they are intelligent.
Yeah.
This
Yes.
is the same thing. It's got different names, but it goes back a long time, and it goes back into where all these different countries have their own names for this stuff. But
Mhm.
now, more and more people are
Yeah.
contacting me saying they've seen UFO, and now what I'm getting is balls of light, balls of light. Occasionally, I might get a sphere. Occasionally, I might get something that might look like a craft. But you know as well as I do, it was only like earlier in the year, so several months ago, maybe 6 months ago. Drawn to the back garden, as you
Mhm.
do. You look up, I'm seeing a structured craft. I'm seeing a dart shape. It's more at the front, longer, but at the back, 5 lights on it. No sound whatsoever, quite low. I was like, oh, okay, interesting, you know. Take the phone out, the cell phone, record it. What I'm seeing and what I'm recording, two different things. Called Jackie out. Jackie comes out, cell phone, said,
Yeah.
film it. And then I'm asking, you can hear me on the thing saying, what do you see? What's your camera see? What do you see? Same thing's happening to her. So sometimes it's like it's half done because I think it comes in two stages. I think that
There we go.
it can manifest to look like a craft. And also, when you take a photograph, it will look like what you're seeing. And that's understandable because the intention's there. The double slit experiment shows it. It doesn't matter if you're filming the double slit, it's still going to collapse, even if you're not watching it, because it's the intent of you filming it. Exactly the same with you taking a photograph, it should collapse. It doesn't. In this case, it seems to show its true self on camera. It appears as a giant ball of light. You have
All
a
right,
good,
pal.
you have
Have
a
a
good
good
weekend.
evening.
All right.
You
Cheers,
too,
buddy.
buddy.
Ta-ra, mate.